Hello students, welcome back to Algebra 1B. Today we're going to talk about solving quadratic equations by factoring. Now, this is one of the biggest ideas in all of Algebra 1. We're going to use this a lot, but today we're going to start off very slowly. So I want you to think of this equation right here. X squared plus 5x plus 6 is equal to 0. Now this looks a lot like the expressions that we've been factoring in this class, but in this case it says equals 0 on it, which means the question isn't asking me to factor it, it's asking what value of x can be plugged into this equation that would make it true. So I want to start off by showing you something that will not work. So if we try to solve this equation just like we've solved every other equation, we would subtract 6 first, and we would get x squared plus 5x equals negative 6. But now we run into a problem. Where do we go from here? Should I subtract 5x from both sides? Because now I have x squared equals negative 5x minus 6. And then in order to get rid of a square, I need to square root it. And so I would get x equals the square root of negative 5x minus 6. But in order to get to this x, in order to solve, I need to get it outside of the square root sign. So in order to do that, I would square both sides. And now I have x squared equals negative 5x minus 6. And you can see I'm just going around in circles. So solving it using a traditional technique is not going to work. So none of this is mathematically incorrect, but I'm not able to make any real progress. So in order to solve these, we're going to use something called the zero product rule. The zero product rule is a very simple but very powerful idea. And the idea is if I have two things multiplied together, a times b, and the answer is 0. So just think about that right now. Think of two numbers that multiply to 0. My question is, can you do it without one of them equaling 0? The answer to that is no. In order for two numbers to multiply together to equal 0, one of them has to be 0. So if a times b is equal to 0, then either a is equal to 0 or b is equal to 0. So let's go back to our problem. X squared plus 5x plus 6 is equal to 0. Now, the zero product property says if I have two numbers multiplied together and they equal 0. Well, our problem is not two numbers multiplied together. But using the knowledge of factoring that we have, I can change it into 2. So I can go ahead and factor this. This is an easier one, x squared and 6. I know this is x and this is x. Now thinking of two numbers that are going to multiply to 6, but make the corner boxes add up to 5, I can easily see that this is 2 and 3. So this would be 2x and this would be 3x, which would give me, instead of x squared plus 5x plus 6, I would get x plus 2 and x plus 3 equals 0. And so now what I have is I have two pieces. Here's A and here's B. Two pieces that multiply together to equal 0. So if I have two pieces that multiply together to equal 0, then one of them has to be 0. So either x plus 2 is equal to 0 or x plus 3 is equal to 0. And now I have two different equations that I can solve, but I can solve them very easily. I'm going to subtract 2 on each side and get x equals negative 2. And then over here I'll subtract 3 on both sides and get x equals negative 3. Which means this question has two answers. We have x could equal negative 2 or x could equal negative 3. Now for Algebra 1, we can leave the answer like this because we're just learning it. But if you're feeling saucy, you can use an advanced notation, which would be x is equal to, it could be -2 or it could be -3, and then we're going to put it in squiggly brackets. And what that means is that I have a single variable with multiple solutions. Let's do one more practice one. Let's do solve x squared plus x minus 30 equals 0. Now in the same way, I want to take this equation and I want to simplify it down to two polynomials multiplied together. So if I go to factor this one, I have x squared here and -30 here, x and x. Now I need two numbers that are going to multiply to -30, but I need these two corner boxes to add up to x, which we remember, that's 1x. So two numbers that multiply to -30, but then they make those two boxes add up to 1x. So if I start thinking about 30, that could be 1 and 30, or 2 and 15, or 3 and 10. 4 doesn't go into it, but 5 does. And what I see here is that 5 and 6 are only 1 away from each other. So if I add them together, I would get 11, but if I subtract them, I would get 1. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. If I put a 5 here and a 6 here, multiplying those would give me +30. I wish it was -30 though, so I have to make one of them a negative. Since I want my middle term right here to be a positive one, that means I probably want the bigger one to be positive, so I'll make the smaller one negative. They'll give me -5x and +6x, which when those two combine does give me +1x. So that means my equation now turned from x squared plus x minus 30 to x minus 5, x plus 6 equals 0. So now, using the zero product property, this piece right here could equal 0, x minus 5 equals 0, or this piece right here could equal 0, x plus 6 could equal 0. Now we can just quickly solve that, adding 5 to both sides, x equals 5, or subtracting 6 on both sides, x could equal -6. I have one variable with two solutions, so I would say x is equal to 5 or -6, squiggly brackets, and we're all done.